I stood at rock bottom 5 years ago, staring at my reflection in a cracked bathroom mirror. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across my face and tears streamed down my cheeks. In that moment, I had given everything I had to everyone else, leaving nothing for myself. My cup wasn't just empty, it had shattered into 1,000 pieces. That night changed everything. Maybe you're sitting here right now, nodding along because you've been there too. Perhaps you're there right now, stretched so thin you become transparent, saying yes when every fiber of your being screams no, watching your dreams gather dust while you tend to everyone else's gardens. I want to tell you something that might sound radical. You matter not because of what you do for others, not because of your achievements or your sacrifices. You matter simply because you exist. And it's time, right now in this moment, to start treating yourself with the same devotion you've been pouring into everyone else. The world has sold us a dangerous lie. It's whispered in our ears that selflessness means self-erasure, that putting ourselves first is selfish, that our worth is measured by how much we can give, how much we can endure, how much we can sacrifice. I believed that lie for 32 years. I wore my exhaustion like a badge of honor. I thought my perpetual burnout was proof of my goodness. I measured my value by how many people needed me, how many problems I could solve, how many burdens I could shoulder. Then came that night in the bathroom when my body finally refused to carry the weight any longer. When panic attacks became my daily companion, when insomnia turned my nights into endless circles of worry, when my health began to crumble under the strain of being everything to everyone. Here's what nobody tells you about hitting bottom. Sometimes it's the most profound gift you'll ever receive. Because when you're lying there, looking up at where you fell from, you finally see the truth with perfect clarity. You recognize that the path you've been walking isn't sustainable. It isn't noble. It's a slow form of self-destruction disguised as virtue. Let me share a story that might resonate. Last year, I met Sarah, a brilliant executive who ran her department with clockwork precision. She was the first to arrive and the last to leave. She answered emails at midnight, covered for colleagues on weekends, and hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. Her team loved her. Her bosses praised her dedication. She was living the dream, or so everyone thought. I saw Sarah again 6 months later. She had lost 20 pounds without trying. Her hands shook when she held a coffee cup. Her marriage was falling apart. Her children had stopped asking her to attend their school events because they already knew the answer would be, "I'm sorry, I have to work." "I don't know who I am anymore," she told me, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent so long being what everyone else needs that I've forgotten how to be me." Sarah's story might sound extreme, but look around this room. How many of you see yourself in her struggle? How many of you have forgotten the sound of your own voice beneath the chorus of others' needs? The truth is, putting yourself first isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's not just about self-preservation. It's about self-respect. Think about it. When you board an airplane, what does the flight attendant tell you about oxygen masks? Put yours on first before helping others. There's profound wisdom in that simple instruction. When you run yourself into the ground, you're not actually serving anyone. You're not being noble. You're depleting your most precious resource, yourself. And eventually, inevitably, you'll have nothing left to give. I learned this lesson through years of therapy, through countless tears, through the painful process of rebuilding my life from that bathroom floor moment. I learned that setting boundaries isn't mean, it's mandatory. That saying no doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you an honest one. That taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. Would you treat someone you love the way you treat yourself? Would you demand that they work until exhaustion? Would you criticize their every decision? Would you deny them rest, joy, and peace? Of course not. So why do we do this to ourselves? The answer lies in our conditioning. From childhood, many of us learn that our worth is tied to our utility. Good children put others first. Good employees sacrifice their personal lives for the company. Good friends always say yes. Good parents give up everything for their kids. True worth isn't earned through sacrifice. It's inherent. It exists in you right now, whether you're achieving great things or simply breathing. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to bleed for it. I remember the first time I truly understood this. I was sitting in my therapist's office, exhausted from recounting all the ways I was trying to be good enough. She looked at me with such compassion and asked, "Would you require this much from a flower to prove it deserves to bloom?" That question stopped me in my tracks. Would I demand that a flower prove its worth? Would I tell it to bloom faster, bigger, brighter? Would I shame it for taking the nutrients it needs from the soil? Would I criticize it for turning toward the sun? The very idea seems absurd, yet we do this to ourselves every day. We deny our basic needs. We ignore our internal rhythms. We push against our natural limits until something breaks, and maybe cling. Putting yourself first doesn't mean becoming selfish or uncaring. It doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities or the people you love. Instead, it means recognizing that you can't serve from an empty vessel. It means understanding that self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Think about a car. If you never change the oil, never refuel, never perform maintenance, what happens? Eventually, it breaks down. No amount of wishing or willpower can keep it running without proper care. You are no different. Your body, mind, and spirit require maintenance. They need refueling. They deserve care. I see some of you shifting uncomfortably in your seats. Perhaps you're thinking, but I have responsibilities. I have people depending on me. I can't just put myself first. I understand. I felt the same way. But consider this. What good are you to anyone if you're running on fumes? There's a truth that transformed my life. Setting boundaries and prioritizing your well-being isn't just about you. It's about being able to show up fully for the people and causes you care about. It's about sustainability. It's about creating a life that energizes rather than depletes you. When I finally learned to put myself first, something miraculous happened. My relationships improved because I was no longer showing up resentful and exhausted. My work became more impactful because I was operating from a place of strength rather than desperation. My health improved because I finally gave my body the rest and care it had been begging for. But the most profound change was internal. The constant background noise of anxiety began to quiet. The crushing weight of others' expectations lifted. For the first time in my adult life, I could hear my own voice clearly, and what it was saying changed everything. It told me I was enough, not because of what I did for others, but simply because I existed. It reminded me that my worth wasn't tied to my productivity, my achievements, or my ability to please others. It showed me that taking care of myself wasn't selfish. It was an act of profound self-respect. Consider the oak tree. It doesn't apologize for taking up space. It doesn't feel guilty about reaching for sunlight. It doesn't shame itself for requiring water and nutrients. It simply grows naturally and unapologetically, and in doing so provides shelter, beauty, and stability to countless other beings. You are no different. Your growth, your well-being, your happiness, these aren't luxuries to be earned. They're your birthright. And claiming them isn't selfish. It's necessary for you to fulfill your potential and truly serve your purpose in this world. As we pause here in this first section, I want you to sit with this truth. You are worthy of your own time, attention, and care. You deserve to put yourself first, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. In our next section, we'll explore practical ways to implement this truth in your daily life. But for now, simply let yourself absorb this fundamental reality. Take a deep breath. Feel the weight of other people's expectations falling away. Feel the freedom that comes with knowing that you don't have to earn your right to exist, to thrive, to prioritize your own well-being. This is where true transformation begins, not with grand gestures or dramatic changes, but with the quiet recognition of your inherent worth. Standing in line at the grocery store last week, I watched a mother with 3 young children. Her cart was overflowing, her phone was ringing, and her youngest was having a meltdown as other customers shot her disapproving looks. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and did something remarkable. She put her phone away, knelt down to her crying child's level, and whispered, "Mommy needs a minute." In that simple act, she demonstrated exactly what we're talking about today. She chose to honor her needs without shame. She showed her children that it's okay, essential, even to acknowledge when we're overwhelmed and take care of ourselves. This is where the rubber meets the road. It's one thing to understand intellectually that we deserve to put ourselves first. It's another thing entirely to actually do it, especially when faced with the pressures and judgments of others. Let me tell you about Marcus, a former student of mine. He worked 60 hours a week at a prestigious law firm, never saying no to additional cases, always being the team player. His colleagues praised his dedication. His supervisors fast-tracked him for partnership. But every Sunday night, panic would set in. His chest would tighten. His thoughts would race. Still, he pushed through, believing this was the price of success. One Tuesday afternoon, during a crucial client meeting, Marcus's body made the decision his mind wouldn't. He had a panic attack so severe that he needed medical attention. As he lay in the emergency room, his blood pressure dangerously high, the doctor asked him a question that changed his life. Is this success worth dying for? That question cut through years of conditioning. Marcus realized he'd been measuring his worth by his willingness to self-destruct. The next day, he did something radical. He set boundaries. He started leaving work at a reasonable hour. He declined new cases when his plate was full. He took his vacation days. You know what happened? The sky didn't fall. His career didn't end. Instead, his work improved because he was functioning at his best rather than running on fumes. Some colleagues grumbled, sure. Some partners were initially but Marcus stood firm in his truths. His worth wasn't determined by his willingness to sacrifice his health and happiness. This is where many of us get stuck. We understand the concept of putting ourselves first, but we fear the consequences. We worry about disappointing others. We dread the potential backlash. We feel guilty for prioritizing our own needs. Let's address these fears head on. Yes, when you start putting yourself first, some people will be uncomfortable. They've grown accustomed to your constant availability, your endless giving, your willingness to put their needs above your own. Their discomfort isn't your responsibility. Think about a garden hose that's been running full blast for years, watering everyone else's gardens while your own withers. When you finally turn that hose toward your own parched soil, those who've been benefiting from your resources might complain. Let them. Their gardens aren't your responsibility. Yours is. I learned this lesson the hard way through my relationship with my best friend of 20 years. She was used to calling me at any hour, expecting immediate emotional support, regardless of what I was doing. When I finally set boundaries explaining that I couldn't be available 24/7 and needed to prioritize my own well-being, she was hurt and angry. For weeks, she gave me the cold shoulder. She told mutual friends I'd changed, that I'd become selfish. Each accusation felt like a knife in my heart. But I held firm because I knew this truth. If a relationship can only survive through my self-neglect, it's not a healthy relationship. Eventually, something beautiful happened. Our friendship transformed. She began respecting my boundaries. She started taking more responsibility for her own emotional well-being. Today, our relationship is stronger because it's built on mutual. Brings us to a crucial point. Putting yourself first isn't about becoming an island. It's about creating healthy interdependence. It's about showing up in relationships as a whole person rather than a fractured caretaker. Consider the example of an orchestra. Each musician must tune their own instrument. They must practice individually. They must take care of their own musical development. Only then can they contribute effectively to the collective harmony. If they neglect their individual preparation in favor of helping others, the entire orchestra suffers. You are the primary instrument in your life's orchestra. No one else can tune you. No one else can maintain you. No one else can do the essential work of self-care and self-respect on your behalf. This might sound overwhelming. After years or decades of putting others first, how do you even begin to shift the balance? Start small. Start with one boundary, one act of self-care, one moment of choosing yourself. Perhaps it's saying no to an additional project when you're already overwhelmed. Maybe it's taking a lunch break away from your desk, phone turned off, giving yourself space to breathe. It could be as simple as going to bed when you're tired instead of pushing through to finish one more task. Remember Elena, a woman I met at a workshop last year. She hadn't taken a day off in 3 years, priding herself on being the employee who never said no. Her first act of self-care was tiny but significant. She stopped answering work emails after 6 p.m. The first week was terrifying. She kept checking her phone, anxiety gnawing at her stomach. But gradually something shifted. She started sleeping better. She had energy to cook dinner. She could be present with her family instead of constantly being pulled into work demands. 3 months later, Elena reported that her productivity had actually increased. By giving herself permission to have boundaries, she was showing up to work refreshed and focused instead of exhausted and resentful. This is the paradox of putting yourself first. It actually makes you more effective in every area of your life. When you honor your own needs, you have more to give. When you respect your own boundaries, you can respect others' boundaries. When you treat yourself with compassion, you have more compassion available for others. Think about oxygen levels in your blood. When they drop too low, your body automatically prioritizes vital organs. Your extremities might go cold as blood flow is redirected to keep your heart and brain functioning. This isn't selfish. It's survival. Your body inherently understands what many of us have forgotten. Sometimes you have to prioritize your core needs to survive. You might be thinking, but what about my responsibilities? My children? My aging parents? My team at work? These are valid concerns. Putting yourself first doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities. It means approaching them from a place of wholeness rather than depletion. Consider the difference between these two scenarios. In the first, you're running on empty, snapping at your kids, resentful of your obligations, barely holding it together. In the second, you've taken care of your own needs so you can be present, patient, and genuinely engaged with your loved ones. Which version of you can better serve your family? Which version can make clear decisions at work? Which version has the emotional bandwidth to actually enjoy life instead of just surviving it? I remember watching my mother run herself ragged trying to be everything to everyone. She was the perfect employee, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter. She never said no. She never took time for herself. She wore her exhaustion like a crown of thorns, as if her suffering somehow made her more worthy. Then came her heart attack at 52. In the hospital, holding her hand, I realized she had taught me two profound lessons. First, that self-sacrifice isn't noble, it's unsustainable. Second, that if we don't choose to put ourselves first, our bodies will eventually make that choice for us. This isn't about being selfish. It's about being sustainable. It's about creating a life that you can maintain without breaking. It's about recognizing that you deserve the same care and consideration that you so freely give to others. As we prepare to move into our final section, I want you to consider this. What would your life look like if you treated yourself with the same kindness you show your best? What would change if you believed, truly believed, that your worth isn't tied to your productivity or usefulness to others? Take a moment. Feel the weight of that possibility. Feel the freedom in knowing that you don't have to earn the right to take care of yourself. You don't have to justify prioritizing your well-being. You don't have to apologize for having needs and honoring them. In our final section, we'll explore how to maintain this self-priority in the face of pushback, how to build a sustainable practice of self-respect, and how to create a life that honors both your needs and your connections to others. But you're worthy of coming first in your own life, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. 3 years ago, I received a call from my sister at 2 a.m. She was sobbing, barely able to speak. After 15 years of being everyone's rock, the perfect wife, mother, daughter, friend, she had finally cracked. "I don't know who I am anymore," she whispered. "I've spent so long being what everyone needs that I've disappeared." When we crystallize something I've seen countless times, when we consistently put others first, we don't just elect ourselves. We erase ourselves. We become ghosts in our own lives, present for everyone else's story, but absent from our own. The path back to yourself isn't easy. It requires courage, consistency, and most importantly, the willingness to sit with discomfort. Because make no mistake, when you start putting yourself first, there will be discomfort. People who are used to your constant availability will push back. Those who benefited from your self-neglect will resist change. Remember Tony, an emergency room nurse who worked double shifts for years. When he finally started declining extra shifts to protect his mental health, his colleagues called him unreliable. His supervisor implied he wasn't a team player. The guilt was overwhelming, but Tony held firm. He remembered the countless patients he'd treated who'd ended up in the air because they'd ignored their own needs for too long. He understood that by taking care of himself, he was actually providing better care to his patients. Today, he's not just a better nurse. He's a role model for his colleagues, showing them that self-care isn't selfish. It's essential. This is where real change happens, in these small daily choices to honor yourself. It's choosing to take your lunch break even when others eat at their desks. It's maintaining your boundaries even when it makes others uncomfortable. It's prioritizing your well-being even when the world suggests you shouldn't. Let me share something powerful I learned from watching my grandmother in her final years. She had spent decades taking care of everyone else, putting her own needs last. In her 80s, facing serious health challenges, she finally started saying that. She declined family gatherings when she needed rest. She asked for help instead of struggling alone. She prioritized her peace over others' expectations. Some family members called her difficult. Some said she'd changed, but in her quiet moments, she told me something profound. I wish I'd done this sooner. All those years I spent worried about disappointing others, I was disappointing myself. This is the heart of what we're talking about. Recognizing that every time you sacrifice your well-being to please others, you're betraying yourself. Every time you ignore your needs to meet others' expectations, you're sending yourself a message that you don't matter. You matter. Let that sink in. Really feel it. You matter not because of what you do for others, not because of your achievements or sacrifices, but simply because you exist. Your worth isn't earned through self-sacrifice. It's inherent, unchangeable, complete. I see some of you shaking your heads. Perhaps you're thinking of all your responsibilities, all the people who depend on you. Listen carefully. Putting yourself first doesn't mean putting yourself only. It means ensuring that your own cup is full, so you can give from a place of abundance rather than depletion. Consider the example of Jamie, a single parent raising 3 kids while running a small business. For years, she prided herself on sleeping only 4 hours a night, never taking breaks, always being available. Her wake-up call came when she fell asleep at the wheel, nearly causing a serious accident that near-miss forced her to confront an uncomfortable truth. Her self-neglect wasn't serving anyone. It was putting everyone at risk. Today, Jamie has non-negotiable self-care practices. She sleeps 7 hours. She takes Sundays off. She asks for help when she needs it. Has this made her a worse parent or business owner? Quite the opposite. Her children see a mother who models healthy boundaries and self-respect. Her business has become more sustainable because she's operating from a place of clarity rather than... This is the transformation that becomes possible when you put yourself first up, not just in your own life, but in the lives of those around you. You become a living example of what it means to honor yourself while still showing up for others. You demonstrate that self-respect and compassion for others aren't mutually exclusive. Let's be honest about some. This path isn't always straight or simple. There will be days when old patterns resurface, when guilt creeps in, when the voice of conditioning whispers that you're being selfish. These moments aren't failures. They're opportunities to practice self-compassion. Remember Maria, who finally started taking art classes after 20 years of putting her creative dreams on hold. The first time her child got sick on class night, she almost gave up the whole endeavor. The guilt was overwhelming. But instead of abandoning her commitment to herself, she found a solution. Her neighbor could watch her child for those 3 hours. Putting yourself first doesn't mean having perfect boundaries all the time. It means being willing to problem solve rather than automatically sacrificing yourself. It means getting creative about meeting both your needs and your responsibilities. Think about it like maintaining a car. You don't feel guilty about putting gas in your car or taking it for regular maintenance. You understand that these actions are necessary for the car to function. Your well-being deserves the same matter-of-fact attention. As we near the end of our time together, I want to share one final story. Last month, I met an elderly man at a coffee shop. Noticing my laptop open to these very notes, he asked what I was working on. When I explained, tears filled his eyes. I spent my whole life taking care of everyone else. He said, I miss my children growing up because I was always working. I miss my wife's best years because I was too busy being responsible. I miss my own life because I thought sacrifice meant love. Don't make my mistake. The people who truly love you want you to take care of yourself. His words hit home because they reveal a profound truth. Those who genuinely care about you want you to thrive, not just survive. They want you to be whole, not hollowed out. They want you to shine, not burn out. So here's your permission slip. Not that you need it, but sometimes it helps to hear it. You have the right to put yourself first. You have the right to take up space. You have the right to prioritize your well-being without guilt or start small if you need to. Maybe it's 5 minutes of quiet in the morning before everyone wakes up. Maybe it's saying no to one obligation that drains you. Maybe it's asking for help instead of struggling alone. Whatever it is, do it with the conviction that you deserve it. Because you do deserve it. You deserve to be first in your own life. You deserve to honor your needs. You deserve to treat yourself with the same kindness and consideration you show others. At the end of your life, you won't wish you'd sacrifice more of yourself. You won't wish you'd worked longer hours or said yes more often. You'll wish you'd been brave enough to live authentically, to honor your needs, to put yourself first. That opportunity's here now. Today, in this moment, you don't have to earn it. You don't have to prove you deserve it. You just have to claim it. Stand guard over your peace. Protect your energy. Honor your needs. Do it unapologetically. Do it consistently. Do it because you understand that putting yourself first isn't selfish. It's sacred. Your worth isn't in what you do for others. It's not in your sacrifice or your struggle. It's in your existence. It's in your breath. It's in your being. You matter. You deserve to put yourself first, and you don't need anyone's permission but your own to do so. Thank you for allowing me to share these truths with you today. May you walk forward from here with the unshakable knowledge that you are worthy of coming first in your own life, not tomorrow, not when everything is perfect. Right now, just as you are.